The more they squeeze the landlords, the more landlords that leave, the rents ultimately got, and the people ultimately that will suffer from that will be tenants. It'll be tenants paying that extra.
I guarantee now there'll be people out there, landlords, that won't know everything.
Your expectations and your perception of the rental market are completely unrealistic.
But what do we mean by buy-to-let 2.0?
It's not just the landlords. There are tenants that play the game as well.
Landlords will be facing higher taxes on their rental income.
Before, you could just say, oh, we're selling, we're going to sell, serve a notice, get them out, gone.
The courts will throw the case out, they'll throw the eviction case out, and they won't hear it if they've not served the how to rent guide correctly.
Would a landlord have to be a bit mad to have somewhere fully furnished?
So actually, it's not just about the rent, it's about the longevity.
So what advice would you give a new landlord entering the buy-to-let market?
I don't think demand is going to dwindle, so naturally I think those rents will increase.
What advice have you got for landlords in terms of managing that relationship?
I think we've noticed that with the properties that have been re-let over the last 6 to 8 months, perhaps not even achieving what the last tenant was paying.
So every penny that they're earning as a result of this venture, subject to higher rate tax.
The UK rental market is heading towards one of the biggest shake-ups in decades, with new laws, major compliance deadlines, shifting yields and fast-moving tech. Landlords are being pushed into a new era, which some people are calling Buy-to-Let 2.0. In this episode of Your Next Chapter, Simon and George are joining me to break down exactly what's changing, what's coming in 2026, and what landlords must do right now to stay compliant, profitable, and ahead of the curve. So thanks for joining us, gents. Good to have this discussion. What do we mean by Buy-to-Let 2.0?
Well, I think essentially you've got three real forces that are colliding here. We've got the legal cliff edge that we're facing next year with the Renters' Rights Bill and increased compliance, much tougher qualities on standards and data, and I think the budget this week where landlords will be facing higher taxes on their rental income. So only the really professional operators will be able to survive.
What do we mean by this cliff edge? That sounds quite scary.
There's different ways you can look at it from a financial perspective for landlord and for a tenant. Rents will go up because landlords are getting extra costs. The natural thing for them to do is put the rent up. With contracts changing and going, no long-term ASTs, 2-month rolling contracts as such, or month-to-month rolling contracts, but then you've got 2 months notice. So there's just going to be, from that point of view, there's just a lot of things that are changing, which a lot of landlords have never been through this. So it's a whole new spectrum for them.
And George, you mentioned the budget, which was this week. How's that looking?
Yeah,
not great.
Yeah, well, it's essentially the Chancellor said that if you're a landlord, then you're firmly in the firing line, pretty much. So they'll be paying more tax on their rental income. Most landlords are already going to be higher rate taxpayers anyway, and I think if they were already feeling the squeeze previously, it's definitely not going to get any easier in the years to come. It
feels like there'll be a more challenging rental market just to engage with anyway, because there's a lot of people feeling the squeeze from that budget, isn't there? So I guess there's a tension there as well, that landlords are thinking, I'm being squeezed a bit here, but then everyone that I'm trying to get into my property is also being squeezed. And it feels like a lot of the legislation that's come through does put a lot more power into the hands of renters rather than landlords. So I imagine it might strain a few relationships.
I think that's always been there to a certain extent. I mean, landlords look at it from their own perspective, which I totally understand. That's always, we all would, but also tenants have to look at it from their own financial perspective. I know everyone says, landlords, it's costing me more money, but tenants can only pay so much. That's the crux of it. And with this rolling contracts now, what's the best way? Having a tenant in there 2-3 months, they move out, landlord's got to pay to get a new tenant in. Do that a couple of times a year, you've wiped out any profit at all. Yeah,
all your returns are just being completely eroded by that process.
What are the consequences of that going to be then? Like, are we going to see less landlords? Are people going to start selling, thinking, I may as well just put this on the market? Or because Perry's talked on the show about, there are some big challenges come up, but there's also a great opportunity if you want to do things properly and if you're a landlord that's in it for the long game.
Yeah,
it's going professional. It's going full on.
I think we've already seen over the last couple of years, we've already seen a bit of an exodus, particularly around London. Lots of landlords leaving the market. I don't think that the rental market in the UK has grown much since 2016, really. So And I think that we'll probably see more of that. And I think the landlords who are currently highly leveraged, they're not really getting the yield that they thought they'd be getting on their rentals. It may be time for them to think about selling up. But I think if they're getting a good return on them still, and they're still getting a good return on the rent, and they've got a decent amount of equity in the property, and as long as they've kept up to date with maintenance and things, because things like that will become increasingly more important in the years to come, then it can still be a worthwhile asset holding on to. And I think rent naturally will increase as supply falls. I don't think demand is going to dwindle, so naturally I think those rents will increase.
So if you're a landlord, then what are the key pillars that you kind of need to be focusing on to make sure that you're capitalising on the opportunity rather than finding yourself in a really challenging situation?
I think it all depends what is your personal goal as a landlord. What's your main objective? Is it? I mean, the best way to do it is buy a property that's run down, do it up, refinance, rent it out. That's the best way to make any money from the start. Going along and buying a property in a residential chain, buying a property, renting out, unless you're putting a hell of a big deposit in, it's just not worthwhile. So a lot of people there's a lot of places in the country where you can still make good money out of buy-to-lets. And I think people just need to look further afield and also work on what their personal strategy is and goal. Is it to build up a property portfolio for their kids? So actually, it's not just about the rent, it's about the longevity. For me, there's the easiest strategy: buy something that needs work doing to it, refinance it, but potentially leave more money in. Don't think, right, I want to leave as little as possible, take as much out as possible. Because with interest rates, we don't know what's around the corner. But money can be made, but it's got to be so professional, and everything's got to be by the book, all the documentation, absolutely everything.
Yeah, I think the compliance is absolutely key for landlords going forwards, and the slightest mistake in any form of compliance, that they'll be lumbered with a real problem.
You can't get the tenants out.
Yeah.
So if
they'll have a real problem.
Then moving in, if you've not issued EICR or EPC, if you've not physically issued it to them, you can't actually.
The big one that I see most people overlooking at the moment is the How to Rent Guide, which is served at the beginning of the tenancy.
Yes,
and the courts will they'll throw the case out if the How to Rent Guide has not been. It's the most simple thing to serve at the beginning of the tenancy, and it's the one I see overlooked the most, and it's the one that tenants often say that they were never served. So
what's the consequences of forgetting that then?
The consequences are that if you serve your tenant, even if you serve the tenant, and we're talking about now pre-Renters' Rights Bill coming in, the courts will throw the case out. They'll throw the eviction case out, and they won't hear it if they've not served the How to Rent Guide correctly. So there's a plethora of forms and documents and prescribed information that needs to be issued at the beginning of a tenancy, and if even one of those hasn't been served correctly. And I see agents, I see professional agents forgetting to do it sometimes. So if they're not able to stick to the correct protocols, what hope do small independent landlords have? And if any one of those forms hasn't been served, then the courts can throw the eviction process. They'll throw it out and they won't hear it.
So that compliance element is absolutely
crucial,
huge beyond belief, right? If you want to,
I mean, it's always been important. But I think right now, it's so deep, and I think as much as some landlords like to do things themselves, I think using an agent sometimes just takes that pressure away. It just saves there's a lot into it. There's a lot of changes, and there'll be more changes to come. It's every year there's something new.
Yeah, referencing as well. I think I can't stress how important referencing for your tenants is at the moment, because once they're in your property, ultimately it's pretty much up to them at the moment how long they stay there for. And you as the landlords, you're to a certain extent, you will be stuck with them. So you have to get it right at the beginning. And the referencing is so important at the moment. And
I imagine that's not an easy process. Like there's probably something better handled for an agent rather than going solo. Absolutely. So when you're doing the referencing, you want to be looking at their annual income as a household, looking at credit records, looking at previous landlord checks. And there are lots of tech and AI and things that do a really good job of this now. Open banking is a really good one.
And even if they've got a partner who may be moving it, if I was renting a property and paying for it all, and you get my partner, you have to reference both of them. So just got one now where tenants want to take a property. Oh, my partner's not moving, going to be moving in for 3-4 months, but we still have to do the referencing on them beforehand.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you've got to try and keep an eye on them to make sure everything is above board.
So compliance is that big pillar. We kind of talked about that on the show when the bill was first announced. You know, I think it's probably earlier in the year. We're going to talk about technology. We're going to talk about AI. But one thing that's very timely that we've mentioned is the budget. So what are some of the real consequences from the budget? What are some of the things that have come out of the budget that are going to have a direct impact on this bill and on landlords?
Well, I think the housing market largely has escaped unscathed sub 2 million from the budget, which I think most agents and sellers would have been happy to hear. I think the kind of stealth taxes in there that perhaps weren't immediately obvious would be the increase on landlords' income tax. So any income that they make on their rental properties, they're paying an extra 2 percentage points on that. Most landlords are going to be higher rate taxpayers anyway, so they'll feel that. And if they were already feeling the squeeze now, that's going to be really tough. And the budget could well see them exit the market. And also just the freezing on the tax thresholds anyway. They didn't change the headline rates, but the freezing of the thresholds for another 3 years just means that more and more of landlords' profits are going to find their way into those higher brackets, and they'll be paying more tax on them. So I think it's it's not, they weren't massive changes, but I think that they'll have an effect for sure for landlords more so than
because also a lot of landlords, these sort of if you've got a good job, got property. One of the ways to try and cut back in taxes, put more money through where you're working into a pension, but haven't they cut that now? So you can't put as much in. And they know what people are doing, so think, okay, well, I'll put that into my pension. They've got my rentals, but now I can't put as much because now they're going to get that extra bit on tax.
They didn't have to change the headline rates, but they did it quietly.
They've just take it from there. Put it there. So I think little things like that, which I do find a bit of annoyance, because you take all the private landlords away.
Well, you take all the private landlords away. It doesn't take a genius to work out what's going to happen. Rents will soar, as they already have. We saw what happened in 2022, 2023. Rents soared by 20-25% almost overnight. And who's footing that bill? It's tenants.
The lowering of the tax bracket, like the 40% tax bracket, I imagine there could be some scenarios as well where landlords find themselves in that because of income from the property. So I guess that's another blow to
100%. I mean, most small landlords, if they've got a day job, earning a modest salary,
doesn't even have to be great salary, to be honest.
No. Well, the higher rate tax bracket, if it had kept in line with inflation, should be in the region of £70,000. But it won't be. It'll be anyone earning probably more than £50,000 will fall into that bracket, which is most people. That will be most people. Certainly, almost all landlords. So every penny that they're earning as a result of this venture is subject to higher rate tax. So it really isn't any surprise that we've seen them leaving in their droves.
And don't forget, that's the tax on the full rent. So if they've got it in their own name and they're paying a mortgage, they'd only get 20% relief, but they're getting taxed on the full amount, which is based on their wage as well. So there's just there's nothing good in it for a landlord from a financial perspective.
No, they're easy targets, and they've been targeted
for a long time.
Well, it's very popular policy.
Me
and Perry have talked about that on the show. Like,
really?
But we're going to clamp down on landlord. This,
Well,
everybody gets fired up.
You lose the landlords. We're already in generation rent. Everybody's renting, and young people are struggling to find deposits for mortgages. So people need to rent. If you drive all the landlords out, what have you got left?
What's going to happen?
Built to rent. But.
Well, that is the model, isn't it? New builds.
The national insurance, no national insurance on rental income.
Thank God.
Is that a tiny win in amongst the?
But they've sort of snuck it. They're getting it back, aren't they? As such with the stealth tax.
Tell us about that.
And the pension as well. So there's a lot of little things where they've just sort of. It sounds great, but with the taxes going up,
Yeah.
Bigger picture, still not great. It's not
No.
a great picture.
Yeah, bigger picture. I think ultimately it was the housing market. I think got off relatively lightly, but landlords, I think, were firmly in the firing line.
I think there are good things. I think it makes the industry. I mean, let's be honest. The industry hasn't been shedding good light for. It's not as if every landlord's fantastic and brilliant. There's a lot of things where it does need to change and improve. Maybe certain things like this will scare off the not so good landlords.
Yeah, there was some bad landlords.
Yeah.
There were some really, really bad examples. But this
And I think things like this do help get them out of the picture.
Yeah,
Because if they get caught, the fines will be ludicrous. So yeah, you will. I would think you would get the better properties going on the market for sale because they're not going to have the funds to refurb.
Yeah, absolutely.
So from a compliance perspective then, a lot of this seems to revolve around Section 21. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that's going to mean for landlords?
Yeah, well, one bonus is, if you can call it a bonus, we've known it's been coming. So you'd like to think better landlords and people who are sort of very compliant and set up properly will be aiming and getting themselves prepared for what's coming up. But the crux of the matter is it's no fault evictions. So you have to have 100% concrete reason you want to get them out. And it's not, before you could just say, oh, we're selling, we're going to sell, serve a notice, get them out, gone.
Increase rent to whatever you want, pretty much.
You could literally come up with anything.
Yeah.
This now means you've got to do it in just a professional manner. Everything's got to be done correctly. So that's where it becomes very important to make sure you've got, like we said earlier on, everything set up on the compliance side. Because if you're not got everything set up, handed on a plate right at the start of a tenancy, and you want to look at a way of doing anything, you won't get them out.
So it has to go through court. Is that going to be the case? Because is that just going to create a scenario where the courts are clogged, this takes forever, and you can kind of let's say a landlord wants to evict me from a property, and I say no, I refuse. Do I have to pay to take them to court, or is that just because could you not just everybody just do that anyway, just to delay the process and clog the court? And
yeah, absolutely. So you don't have to go to the process. Should be that the Section 8 replaces the Section 21. And you'll have to give a solid reason as to why you're serving that Section 8. So one of the key reasons I would imagine would be landlord wants to sell, which will be a legitimate reason under the Section 8.
But
then you've actually got to sell it as well, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I'm thinking of selling it in a few years. Like, no,
yeah,
that's got to go on the market.
I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I guarantee you'll have to have some sort of documentation get sent off to say it's gone through, changed hands.
Yeah. And you'll have to, but if that tenant refuses to leave, yeah, absolutely, you'd need to go to court. And
which could be 6 to 8 months.
But the tenant wouldn't have to pay for that procedure, the proceeding.
I don't think so.
Because there's no harm in just going, I'm not going to move, take me to court, and that just delaying the process.
I suppose they think with court, if you lose, you have to pay. Yeah. But getting money off a tenant after taking them to court, £5 a month, you have to pay.
Yeah, generally most landlords would normally cut their costs once they've got vacant possession. Right. They normally consider that a big enough win, and they'll cut their losses really.
So let's say a landlord is having some problems, or they just want to be diligent. What sort of things should they be doing? How could they build a picture rather than just going like, "Oh, I want to take this tenant out and become a nightmare," and realising they haven't actually got an audit trail or anything?
It's a tough one because I think with landlords, they need to look at not just go and buy a property and think afterwards. They should start literally right at the start, even speak to a letting agent or whoever, just get that information and get everything in place, what they needed, because I guarantee now there'll be people out there, landlords, that won't know everything. There's so many things, and the letting side of it, and the letting experts, as in a letting agency, you think you've got right from the start to issue out how to rent guide, gas safety, EICR, EPC, right to rent checks. You have to make sure they're all given at the start. I've been in a property and I know I've not had an EICR, but I've kept that in my back pocket. Because if they ever tried to get rid of me, I know they couldn't get rid of me because they've not given me an EICR. But I know I've not got one, but I've not told them.
Whether tenants are informed now. Most tenants know this stuff now. They're very well informed.
So I know it because I'm in the industry, but I've kept that in my back pocket. So if that time comes, I'll go.
Yeah, you can pull it out.
Go for it.
We're going to talk about like technology and AI, but like I think if you're a landlord, you need to assume that every tenant is getting great legal advice because of AI. So like you could just go to ChatGPT or whatever. Here's my and it will go. Oh, do you realise that your landlord didn't do this, this, and this? Right, great, cheers. And that information you would never have got
the access to information. Yeah.
So everyone's going to be clued up, like you said. Everyone's going to be on it.
That's the other thing. It's the speed. The speed that they're able to gain that would be months of research previously.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point because you can come across as the most intelligent in minutes. So you can, like you said, oh, perfect. I've literally got everything. There's nothing they can do. But some landlords won't expect people to not have that knowledge. But now, anybody can get you. You can't blag it and try and do things because people can just find out things
If
so
AI
easily.
knows it, then all the tenants know. And it's that, like you mentioned, it's that process of them like, okay, write me a letter, please.
Yeah.
Like, there you go.
Yeah.
There's a full legal letter that I've just AI'd because she didn't serve a particular form or they wanted to be disruptive.
Absolutely.
It's quite scary, actually.
There's going to be a landlord database as well. So that will have...
There should be a landlord and tenant database.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that would help.
Because let's be honest, it's not just the landlords. There are tenants that play the game as well.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And again, probably not helping the fact, and that hasn't helped with landlords leaving. Most landlords I know that I've dealt with over the years, if they've had a problematic tenant, fallen into rent arrears, caused damage to the property, the first thing they do when they get that property back is they sell it. They say, I've had enough, I'm out, I'll put my money somewhere else. They very rarely wipe their mouth and move on and re-let it. It just doesn't happen.
No, I mean, people always go through these fits and starts, don't we, with property? So you've got people that, like, say, they suddenly sell it, go and reinvest in something else. But when that takes a bit of a tumble, a lot of people end up coming back to property because the longevity of property is good. It's not a short-term game. It's a 10, 15, 20-year game.
Well, it boomed, didn't it? I mean, the buy-to-let boom, people were riding that wave for 10, 15, 20 years. And it's just become less and less appealing over the last 10 years or so to be a landlord. All the gains and the profits they were making have been completely eroded. But yeah, it may come back. But I think with the changes that are coming in, I think it's less likely we'll see a resurgence of that original buy-to-let.
Unless house prices bottom out and interest rates bottom out then. But other than that...
Yeah.
You both kind of talked about how, look, there have been some bad landlords, there have been some properties which are frankly not really safe, there's mould, there's damp, there's some big issues. So as part of this, the government have introduced a decent home standard.
Yeah.
What's some of the, I mean, that's obviously a good thing, that's not a bad thing, right? Tenants set a certain level of expectation to keep them safe, but how far's that gone and what's some of the consequences of that part of this bill?
I find that one good and bad. Because same again, tenants going to use this to try and get new stuff put in their property. That's my only concern. I do agree. I think standards on certain properties do need to be improved, 100%. But it's like George and I were discussing earlier, everybody wants hotel properties.
Yeah.
Standards have changed. I think even youngsters now on holiday, I think when I was 18, 19, a long time ago, it was just a room. Often Spain, it was a room. If you've got aircon, great. But people now want big screen TV. They want flash. They want nice. And it's no different with student accommodations. Everybody wants plush. They don't want the old rubbishy hotels. They want nice hotels. The levels have changed.
Would a landlord have to be a bit mad to have somewhere fully furnished? Would it be much more preferable to just go unfurnished, make life a lot easier? Because otherwise we're just opening the door to like, oh, this has got a bit of mould, or that needs changing. That needs
I think it's a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if it relates so much to furnished or unfurnished, but it will definitely relate to the structural integrity of the property, damp and mould issues, and that sort of thing. And I think generally tenants now have much higher standards and expectations about what they'll put up with and what they'll accept. And the reality is that as a landlord now, if you haven't been maintaining the property and you haven't kept it up to date, and your kitchen's older than your tenant, you're probably going to have a bit of a problem. And I've seen lots of these properties recently where They've come back to the market. They've been rented out for a decade or more, gone through maybe 3 or 4 different sets of tenants, and they've kind of reached the end of their life cycle as a rental. In my opinion, that's the way that I see it. And what I say to landlords is, you've got 2 choices at this stage. You either spend a bit of money and reinvest some capital and get it looking up to scratch, or you sell it, but you're not going to rent it again like this, not for any money. It will sit on the market 6 months. It won't let in that condition.
Yeah, I agree. But the problem is, it's having that money to do the work.
Exactly.
A lot of landlords live off the mortgage, rent. The difference is what they...
Yeah, is that fair? I've always wondered that. For a lot of landlords, is it kind of like month to month? In the sense that the money comes in, covers the mortgage. It's not like,
I would say the vast majority of landlords that I've dealt with over the years, they are a lot of them are accidental landlords. They've maybe got 1 or 2 properties that they rent, and they depend on that rental income to pay that mortgage. And if that rent doesn't come in, they're really tight. And they're the landlords that I think we've seen leave over the last couple of years, and the ones we'll probably see leave.
And that's the concern with no fault evictions and so forth. If suddenly someone's not going to pay, and going to be there for 8 months while it goes to court, minimum, because there'll be a huge backlog. How are they going to afford to keep the house? They're going to get repossessed. The house will get taken potentially.
And I think that's it. It's the renters' rights bill for landlords, I think anyways, has been quite a scary prospect to think about. And the big fear, of course, is I won't be able to get my tenant out. But the other way to look at it, and putting a more positive spin on it, is that as a landlord, surely your number 1 priority should be occupancy and tenant quality and rent. And if your plan is to keep the property rented, then ultimately the renters' rights bill should help enable that, and it should help give you long-term occupancy. The rent will go up, so the rents will be healthy, and you can almost have your pick of tenant at the moment. Then most of the time you'll see a couple of tenants for each property, providing it's been listed at the right price and it's in good condition. But if you're offering a really good product to the market, you can be very selective with the tenant and really pick and choose the best one that fits your property.
And obviously, with one of the changes with price point as well.
So historically, it's been quite frustrating for renters getting in a property because of the way in which the whole bidding process worked. Landlords would accept over offer payments for places. That's changed now under the Renters' Rights Bill. Is that right?
It will be, yeah. It will be. I remember scenarios where we would have a property, we'd list it, we'd have 50 inquiries, 20 viewings, 10 offers, and the bids would be going for 20-25% more than the asking price. And it was crazy. It was when demand just completely outstripped supply. One of the measures is going to be that landlords cannot ask for more than the stated rent at advertising. I think that it will be interesting to see how that works in practice.
Yeah, potentially put rents up as well.
Well, that's what I would assume if I were a landlord, rather than pricing to entice and getting a load of people through and saying, right, put your best foot forward, I would be adding 20% onto my asking price, and then we'll work it backwards.
Just take offers.
Yeah, and surely that's what agents are going to advise as well. They're going to say, look, in this market, historically, it would go 20% over, so put it 20% over, right?
Yeah.
Yes and no, because obviously, right now, I wouldn't advise that because the market's quite tough in rental in the rents for the tenants.
Tough in what respect?
There's not a lot of tenants looking.
Okay.
I think it's seasonal changes are one thing. Obviously, we're pretty close to Christmas now. There's always a bit of a tail off at this time of year.
After Christmas, we'll go busy.
But I do think that we saw a massive boom in 22, 23 of tenant demand. And that was when I think a lot of would-be buyers put their search on hold. They rented for another year before making that plunge and making the purchase. So that kind of pent-up demand, or whatever you want to call it, I don't think we've got anymore. We had massive demand in those couple of years, and that's not there anymore. And therefore, I think we're seeing a bit of a correction in the rental prices anyway.
Yeah, and I think we've noticed that with the properties that have been re-let over the last 6 to 8 months, perhaps not even achieving what the last tenant was paying. So right now, if tenant's going to leave, it's one. They either need a bigger property or something, but if they can find the same property cheaper, they'll probably leave.
Yeah.
So landlords got to be very, very careful on that of keeping tenants. It could even go to the point where a tenant asks for a rent reduction. If properties on the market are cheaper, they might even ask for a rent reduction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've got to justify putting your rent.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be tribunals that you can go to
stop your rent going up.
Yeah.
Surely they're going to get full.
Pretty quickly, I would imagine.
And you can't backdate it. So if they come put the rent up, we think, I don't think that's fair, you can put that forward, go against it, and it'll go to a tribunal. That could take months, because there will be every tenant. I'm surely every tenant's going to.
Why would someone not contest it? Unless they work well. I mean, I guess there are some reasons. You might not fall out with your landlord.
But you might get 6 months of your rent not going up.
Just because you'd be on a waiting list. Just because you'd be waiting.
And the landlord can't backdate those 6 months. So you could get there and not even go up, or it might go up.
It's like appealing a parking ticket. It stays at the lower rate until they tell you no.
Yeah, so it's
buys you a bit of time.
There are so many little things which we just add tweaks and changes. And same again, a tenant can just do that into AI.
Just clogs up the system and just makes everything take a bit longer.
Yeah. So it's interesting times in the rental market, good and bad. And everything just needs to settle, doesn't it? You always get these peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
I think what we're seeing at the moment, and what we're seeing now and what we're coming into, I just think is more of a normal rental market. It's not a market where you've got massive demand outstripping supply. It's just a normal market. And I think one of the things to be aware of is if you, as a landlord, entered the market 2 or 3 years ago, and that was your first time renting your property, your expectations and your perception of the rental market are completely unrealistic. You benefited massively 2 or 3 years ago, probably from an overinflated rent and a bidding war that probably took place, and that just isn't happening in the market now, and I don't and it certainly won't be happening in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure which way it's going to go with the rental market, because there are so many different avenues. I think a lot of the older landlords will not get more properties because the yields just aren't there.
Where are the yields at the moment? Can you talk a bit about rent, the sort of investment opportunities that exist at the moment, the general yields?
They're out there, but not around where we are right now or anywhere in the south east.
You mentioned somewhere earlier you thought would be a good place if you were going to invest in
I know people that invest in South Wales because there's a lot of properties that need work doing to them. Get them at cheap, a good price. It don't always have to be cheap. A good price, do a refurbishment, refinance to a new value, rent them out. House prices are improving down that part of the world. Certain areas in the northeast as well. There's always pockets, but with the yields and everything else, a lot of the high yield areas, house prices don't really shoot up. So what you need to work out, is it your cash flow you want, or are you working on trying to make your money on house prices going up? So for me, it all depends on what your objective is. And if I was buying properties now, I'd be looking all over the country, not just in one area.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give a new landlord entering the buy-to-let market?
I think, same again, everything comes down to what your objective is. And I think a lot of landlords, for a long time, a lot of them just dived in because make money in property, blah, blah, and don't really understand everything because there are so many different things to understand. If I was looking to buy more than one property, I would 100% go into limited company. It just makes... it sets a professional standard. And I think, let's be honest, the government don't want people to have multiple properties in their own name with all the things they're bringing in to stop people doing that. They want things in limited companies because it's more professional. Secondly, it's easier to get tax off a limited company than what it is off a person as well. Especially if taking cash and so forth, it's different for a limited company. Everything has to be through the books. You get better mortgage relief than what you would do as an individual. I just think it gives you the flexibility. You can reinvest your profits into another property and keep everything within the company. You could have 5 properties within the company. You could sell the properties, but sell them through the company, and there's no stamp duty to pay because people are buying the company. So there are different ways. Obviously, there's also more high costs accountants and so forth. But the fact is that everything is going digital anyway. You're going to have to start paying for these things. So I just think, you know where you are from the start, don't you? You don't want to go and buy 2 or 3 in your own name, and then you've got to sell them to a limited company, so then you've got to pay more stamp duty again. So just take that extra cost and that burden at the start, then you've got flexibility once it's in there. That's my personal opinion.
Seems like a bit of an ongoing theme for the conversation with the bill, is you've got to take it a bit more seriously.
Yes.
And, don't try and go at it alone.
Yeah.
Think about starting a company if you're managing multiple properties. Think about getting everything in order at the beginning rather than just seeing how it goes.
Yeah.
It feels like it's gone from something. I guess it's kind of George, you kind of painted a picture earlier of a lot of landlords that you deal with are kind of accidental landlords. Maybe it's an inherited house, maybe it's been passed down, and they've just got it, and they're like, "Oh, do you know what? I'll pop that on the market." This is going to be a more challenging landscape for those type of landlords versus I've got a bunch of money here, I want to get 3 properties, I want to start a company, or maybe they're already in that situation.
Yeah, I think it really is. It's a bit of a line in the sand, and it's if that is your situation and you were an accidental landlord with 1 or 2 properties, if you were already really feeling that squeeze previously, the renters' rights bill and the increased tax that you'll pay with the budget this week, I think unfortunately that will probably squeeze you out of the lettings market over the next couple of years. But if you want to go into this as a professional and look at this as a proper business and a real venture, there is some money to be made, but you need to do it properly.
Yeah, they're not going to make the money like people used to making it. But I just think one of the big reasons everyone's saying the squeeze and everything is because everyone's been remortgaging their rental properties where house prices shot up. Take out the equity, if it's in their personal name, is tax-free. So you remortgage that rental, I can get £40,000 out of that because they'll remortgage it. That's my £40,000, perfect. Carry on renting it, not quite making as much money, but you got £40,000. But that only lasts so long. And so you're not built. People are living off the equity in the house, which is fine. But when you're trying to build up your properties, you want to try and keep as much in as possible because you don't know what's around the corner. But I get it. Money's money, isn't it? It's tax free. So people have just been utilising that as well. And I've had friends who have got themselves in situations like that. Had good fun and enjoyed it. But now, with how interest rates have gone and everything else, now they are really feeling the squeeze.
Well, I think most landlords, their rental properties were barely breaking even, and if that's the case, that's it's really not a surprise. Why we've seen them decide to sell up.
That's scary, isn't it? You think I get it with some accidental ones where a couple they've got together, both got a house each, move into one of them all.
Rent the other one,
blah, blah. I'll keep that as my pension, because a lot of that's always the standard thing, and pay it off. I mean, look, if it can wipe its nose with the property and you can pay the mortgage on a repayment mortgage, not a buy-to-let interest-only one, and be okay, and can afford any sort of things that need to be done on the property, might get a boiler, the standard one, the boiler going, then yeah, that's fine. But if it's something that's going to cost you money, a lot of money, it's like, well, why? I mean, what levels do you go to and losing each month? And
it's not even just that; it's the problems that they're facing with maintenance, tenant issues, which can be anything. Fill in the blanks. And I think a lot of them have got to a point where it's just too many problems. So the easy solution is to put your money somewhere else.
We talked earlier a little bit about AI and how AI will definitely help renters because it's essentially immediate, well-informed legal advice that can write letters within seconds, unlike weeks and weeks and weeks for solicitors and racking up absolutely enormous bills. But if you're a landlord, what kind of tech and AI is going to be really important in 2026? I
think mainly it's the systems that you're using for referencing and that the agent is using to reference your tenants. So things like open banking, so that they can see what tenants' spending habits are like, what sort of income they've got. I think that this is a chance where an opportunity to be really all over the referencing side of things with the tenants. There's also going to be a landlord database, so all of your mistakes or anything, if you like, will be visible. It'll be like Companies House for landlords. So you won't be able to get away with being
it's got disaster written
rogue landlord. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's going to be really important. It's going to be really important for them.
I also do think with tech as well, from a landlord perspective, if they use it right, they can find properties anywhere in the country. So you've got property sources and all different setups, but you can do so much research yourself with the right tech and so forth. I think that is quite a big thing, because it's been harder for landlords to buy out of area without having everything. Yeah, you got the right move, but that's through an estate agent. But I think it's just diving deeper behind the scenes, and there are a lot of property sources out there. Same again, good and bad. Yeah. And I would advise someone using a property source to find a property.
And I think there'll be records of all of the safety certificates that you've got for your property, so that will be logged somewhere. So it'll be very easy to pull up and see whether Mr. Smith has got all of his safety certificates up to date. So you won't be able to hide.
So were there any loopholes that landlords were using prior to this bill that the Renters' Rights Bill has kind of clamped down on and addressed?
I think short-term lets, Airbnb, service accommodation, it's all sort of in the same bracket. The tax levels have changed on that. So I think what they're trying to do is they want more people to suddenly go, okay, look, Airbnb, let's be honest, can be financially beneficial, but it also can be a huge headache, because a lot of them do get quite trashed, as we'd have all seen over social media over the years. So there is a catch-22, but they've taken the benefit away from a financial perspective for the landlord. That does have a knock-on effect, because what they want is those landlords say, oh, you know, I was going to put it back as a normal buy-to-let for long-term. But same again, is it long-term when someone can have a rolling contract? So there will be ways, I would think, that people will be getting around this, where I don't know yet, because these things always need to settle, don't they? And then people start finding ways around everything, I suppose. But yeah, it's going to be interesting for the service accommodation, because workers as well. There's a lot of companies that do short-term lets for workers, certain areas. So it's going to be interesting to sort of see how that settles. So I don't really know enough on the tax side what the damage is going to do to them.
Fair enough.
I think that's the interesting part, isn't it?
We kind of talked a lot today about, you know, it's fairly clear that renters have got a bit more power than they had prior to this bill. There's a lot more in the renters side of the court than there was previously to this. So what advice have you got for landlords in terms of managing that relationship? What can they do to make sure that relationship with the tenant is as good as possible and helps, you know, circumnavigate or avoid completely any challenges or issues?
I think it's key, really. I think it's absolutely key to get that right from the beginning of the process. Because if that relationship sours and breaks down, you're going to have a real long-term problem on your hands. And that can look like anything. It can start with rent arrears, damage to property. So yeah, I think it's a really important relationship to get right from the beginning.
It'll always come down to money, and I think you look after a tenant, they look after you. Generally, is the rule I've always thought of. If you can, personally, keeping even more so with the new legislations, no long-term ASTs, the longer you can keep that tenant there, the better that is for your pocket. If you try and do, you need to know them now, I think, for a rent increase as people, because just diving in there saying, right, put your rent up £50, everyone reacts different, don't they, to that? So if you know a bit more about your tenants and understand, no word of a lie, even give your tenant a bottle of Prosecco at Christmas and their birthday.
Yeah, just little things.
Yeah.
Those little things can go a long way.
Yeah.
For the sake of £8 bottle of Prosecco, it doesn't even have to, just anything. those little things I think go a long way. Birthday cards, just something a bit personal. I think, oh, that's nice. So when you do come round with your increases, they feel they've got a bit more of a friendship. I think it's playing the game. It's sort of being nice, and
I think there's a real balance, because I think one of the things that I've noticed over the years of letting is that the higher the rent goes and the more tenants are paying, the much higher their expectations are, and the less forgiving they are when something goes wrong. And if something goes wrong, they want it fixed yesterday. And there's a real balance to find between getting the market rent and the rent you should be getting, and a rent that tenants are happy to pay. Because the one thing that you see when landlords squeeze every penny they can out of the rent is you get high turnover of tenants. Tenants are leaving every 6 to 12 months. They don't really look after the property, and their expectations are so high. Whereas for a landlord where you've got a tenant like that it can be a real headache, because you don't get any grace when something goes wrong. Whereas when the rent is reasonable, tenants stay longer. They'll do little maintenance jobs themselves often, and they're much easier to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky nothing was brought in saying you've got to have a minimum amount of money in your account for maintenance on your property.
It's a good idea.
Because some industries have that. And I think with haulage companies, they have to have like, I might be wrong, I'm just sort of picking out, I think it's like £10,000 put aside for issues with a lorry. You could have that within buy-to-let. You've got to have a minimum of £5,000 in your account to be able to, just in case a boiler goes or something like that, we know that you've got. So I don't know. There are ways to make this professional, but I just think hammering the landlords on taxes isn't always bringing legislations. But why bringing the tax?
Well, ultimately, it'll be the tenants who are footing that bill.
Yes.
It's the same thing. The more they squeeze the landlords, the more landlords that leave, the rents ultimately got, and the people ultimately that will suffer from that will be tenants. It'll be tenants paying that extra money. So yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22.
I've had it in rental properties where landlord's gone to me, oh yeah, I know I need to do it, I can't afford to do it at the moment. So that's what's going to happen. That's the area which needs to be sorted out, and there's nothing worse. But I think speaking to an agent, I think, is very, very important, because they're going to be on everything from legislation type of thing.
So just to add as well, if there's anybody watching today's episode and you want some questions answered on this subject, just let us know in the comments. Just ask a question in the comments and we'll pick it up in a future episode. So do get in touch and let us know if there's anything we've not covered, any particular concerns that you have. Use the comments, and also just let us know what you think in the comments. Do you agree with the points that we're making? Is there anything you think we've missed that we should pick up and you want to comment on? So gents, I think the main message really is that there are some challenges ahead for landlords. It's not the end of the world. Professionalism will win the day. Having really clear policies and procedures to cover yourself as a landlord seem more important than ever. But there are things you can do. There is help that you can get, and although it might be a challenging market, it's still one that there are clear opportunities. So I think
definitely
it's probably going to be an ongoing conversation on the channel, I'm sure. 2026 will be interesting, I guess, just to see how it lands, see how this bill kind of plays out.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's we've been talking about it for so many years now and kind of speculating what it's going to look like. So yeah, we'll see it play out in front of us next year.
In theory, tenant's going to get a better property, which, let's be honest, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's getting everything to that stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the bit which is going to be the easy part, but let's wait and see.
So thanks so much for joining me, gents. Really enjoyed the discussion. Hopefully it's been useful to people watching out there. Like I said, get in touch in the comments below if you've got any questions. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. There's loads of really, really interesting, insightful content on this channel, so make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.